evening. I would call you friends, looking at the age. I'd like to welcome all of you at this discussion panel, which will talk whether we are Mr. Scrooges or whether we are more of givers nation. With some of you, I'm meeting for the first time, as in case of Mr. Kiska, but in several other cases, I've met these people before, so I can call them my friends. And I come from the Slovak electricity company. Today we're not going to talk about our specific company, we're going to talk about the principles of philanthropy in Slovakia and whether we are keeping the pace with the world or whether we are lagging behind. The first lady of this panel is Lenka Surotchak. For many of you, she is a well-known person. We have met in 1993. And today she works for Foundation Pontis, and it is mainly thanks to Lenka that the team is working so well now. In her CV, it's interesting to learn that she is a reporter for the Slovak television, but being for 20 years in this area is probably the most important fact. Pontis, as the name of the foundation, is quite well known, and the innovation is that they founded Business Forum. This is a foundation for businesses who are thinking in philanthropic way. So, Via Bona Slovakia is a prize that has been around since 2004 in Slovakia, and that's a prize which also attracts business sector to philanthropic area. But today we're going to talk about individual culture of giving, which we believe is lacking in Slovakia. Marek Gešo, this is a person who is a very interesting element in Slovakia. He's very devoted, and from his CV I've learned that at university he graduated from Economic University, and as a student he worked for Accenture, and after 14 years of working for this organization, he now works for a supranational organization, and he himself covers 9 countries, so he's very active, and he himself will talk about activities that Accenture is doing on philanthropic field. Boris Strečanský is on my left-hand side. He is a person with almost 20-year experience in this field. He works in the Center for Philanthropy, and they've done quite a lot in the field of popularization of philanthropy. And last but not least, because this event is being organized together with U.S. Embassy, we are welcoming Mr. Kiska here. He looks like a good angel, and he represents good angel. He has led, and he is conducting a very interesting life. For me, it was interesting to learn that he went to the United States in 1990, and he tried to live there. And in Slovakia, he's really a founder of philanthropy on individual basis. When it comes to Good Angel, it was interesting during your 5th anniversary, you launched in practice this individual giving culture, and everybody was giving 1 kilowatt hour in terms of electricity and in terms of money. It is hard to imagine how much it is, in fact, but for me, I'm working in the electricity sector, I can imagine what it is, and this really helped mainly people with various morbidities and elderly people. I think this was a great idea, and I think these 4 people really materialize the good in Slovakia. I'd like to start with a general question about the situation of philanthropy in Slovakia at the moment. Well, I am more of an amateur here. I shouldn't stand, right, in order not to be too big and to fit in the picture. So, I've been working in the area of philanthropy only for 5 years because before that I worked in the business sphere. So, when it comes to the level of philanthropy in Slovakia today, there are two types of assistances. The activities of, for instance, Accenture, especially if they're supranational companies. So that's one way of helping. And then there is assistance done by companies which are complex. So these companies which are branch companies are usually central headquarters. Today we will also talk about 2% kind of the taxes. So when we talk about these international companies, there is some headquarters sitting somewhere in Paris or wherever, and the headquarters approve how much the company can use for philanthropic purposes out of their costs. And then there are rules which are set by Slovaks. These are born Slovaks rules, and they have more of authorities to decide how much they are going to give today. So it's usually up to a decision of their Slovak leader. So these are the two views from the corporate view. And then we have the individual culture of giving, people who are contributing the good angel, or very days on specific days, and people contribute with some small amount. So I only have the authority to talk about individual donors because that's my field. And because I also meet representatives of larger companies, I can also tell some bits and pieces about the approach and attitude of these companies towards us and our foundation. So when it comes to individual donorship, I believe Slovakia is on the 120th place. 20 in Slovakia have ever had an opportunity to give some amount to charity. In Czech Republic and Poland it's 30%, in Slovenia it's 40%, and in Ireland, Netherlands or Britain it's 75%. So if you look at this, there are only Hungarians behind us. So this situation tells us that only 25% of the Slovak nation have ever been willing to contribute to some philanthropic activities. So comparing to Ireland, which is probably the second on the world scale, it's a terribly low figure. But if we went to longer discussions, which I wouldn't like to, now we could discuss why is it so, why when I get somewhere and I tell people, if you give me €3, I will help a family with a daughter suffering with cancer, and you will know exactly where the money goes. No matter what I tell, the people just won't give anything. But that's up to longer discussions, which I'm not going to engage in. So we have about 45 minutes for the panel and 45 minutes for the questions. So if we take this as a soccer game, who's going to get the ball now? I agree with what Andrej Kiska said. Maybe I'll just add a few facts. In our various surveys, we really found the same. We are in the second half of any ranking when it comes to giving, but the same applies to, for instance, voluntary help, a help unknown person. So we can talk about the rate of behavior of Slovaks. So we definitely are in the second half. Reasons and research the pro-social attitude or mood in the nation is very much correlating with happiness, with subjective happiness of people. So if we feel happy, we act more pro-socially. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the richest country give the most when it comes to GDP. It's rather about happiness, and in the nations where people mostly feel happy, there is a rich culture of giving. So this is as much as I had to say at the moment. So maybe the mood is not as good in this country, and we are very much used to the state taking care of us. Bring some optimism in into this discussion. Would support me. And research show this data, but comparing to Great Britain or United States, where the culture of giving is much more developed, we have to take into consideration that we've only had 20 years of democracy in Slovakia and the relative freedom. So if we look at Slovakia as a country, we can see in our foundation, and we can see it in the cooperation with SMEs and international companies, but also in individual philanthropy, we can see some optimistic growth. And I can give you some figures. If we take individual philanthropy, we have a portal, Good Country, for instance, which has been running for 3 years now, and we're trying for NGOs to be more visible for the corporate donors, and NGOs are living off the support of the corporate sphere to 75%. We really need to rely on 1.5 or 2% of the tax, and we also organize various activities with Accenture, for instance, or HP. We, for instance, organize a Christmas party for HP, and if we look at the visitors of Pohoda Festival who are willing to contribute to Good Country project when they are buying their coffee, that's a fantastic amount, and a year before it was about 18,000 people who contributed. So I believe the tendency is good. There is a growing trend. And last but not least, a project called the Heart for Children. People sent 160,000 euros for urgent for children in urgent conditions who needed help. So I can see the characteristics in the country, and people often help when they see some very urgent need, and when someone asks them for help, and when they see that someone is in need and their help is needed, I think they respond and they help. And also if families or friends address us, we tend to help. So I'll be more optimistic.
It's a question of credibility of individual collections, and the publication of Martin Butora that will be talking about the non-profit sector says that between 2000 and 2010 were more than 200 public collections, and the concept of collecting money or focusing on a specific topic is quite wide. Accenture, Marek, is famous for speaking boldly, and you were very open about corruption in Slovakia. And please share with us, how do you perceive the situation from the perspective of individual donorship, corporate ownership, and giving from the point of view of credibility? As I will be like the previous prime minister, almost previous prime minister, that I will start talking from totally different point of view and totally different perspective. I have been following Boris from a long time, and I have known Lenka for a very long time. Ján, when he was introducing us, he didn't say one thing about himself. His tooth of wisdom has been just pulled out today, and he has this poker face. He shows no pain, no nothing, so he is really strong. And I'm more marketing person, and the marketing teaches you find out who is your audience, and then adapt your speech to the fact who is your audience. So I would try to twist the things around, and I'd like to know, who are you? How many students are here present who are interested in this topic because of their studies, because of their future job? Okay, some. How many NGO representatives are present who are interested how to fundraise money from corporations? Okay, so this will be probably the main topic of this evening. Is anybody from any corporation here present? Great. Okay, there are some, so we can try to take all perspectives. And at the beginning you asked, where do I see the giving, individual or corporate? From the perspective of the corporate donorship and giving, I see that there has been a great progress. When I was saying that I was a marketing person, I'll put it in link with the brands. Brand is rooted a long time ago in Wild West, where the cowboys were having their their stocks, they herds of, and they marked their stocks. Sorry, I didn't want to allude to anything. You know, I was giving this example. Sorry for making this gesture. Well, at that time, that sign had a meaning that this is my cow, this cow belongs to Joe Smith, and nobody touches this cow ever. Later on, this branding, this stamping, labeling did not mean only ownership, but also a quality of a product. When in France and Great Britain, when there were private tailors and they started to make their, for instance, shirts, and they put their name on it, it started to differentiate the quality. And when I get to the present, the brand is about emotions. It's not about quality, but it's also about your attitude towards the community, environment where you live. And because it is a combination of massive social media, you are not going to hide anything. It's not that you are saying one thing and doing another thing. You can't playing those hoax anymore on anybody. Everybody will just learn it. So the customers and clients have higher awareness, and the corporations are forced to higher responsibility, and philanthropy is one of the parts of the responsible corporate behavior. So this is a natural socio-economic and informatic development. Secondly, I do believe that even though some corporations have understood that this is very important for them, they still do not differentiate nuances. What's the difference between philanthropy and sponsoring? And I'll give you a specific example. We go, for instance, to universities to give awards for thesis and for students' works. And when we meet with the dean and the best students from the university, I sit there on behalf of the corporation and some representatives of NGOs or foundations, and they say, okay, this is our social mission to support education and the best students, etc. And then I go there and say, we are interested in your brains, and we give money in you because we want to get public, we get well known in front of you, and we want to then hire you. And this is the truth. And the students, yes, appreciate my being bold, because, okay, you are here because you want to get our brains. So that's okay, fair deal. Philanthropy is about giving and not wanting anything in return. An example would be, Lenka knows that we are going to re-socialize the prisoners. Those prisoners are never going to buy products of our corporation. Unfortunately, it's a very low probability that they will get any employment with our corporation, but still we are working with them. So this is philanthropic activity. We could be talking a lot about it, and I will give floor back to Andrej. There are a couple of questions from internet here, from Monika Svetlika, Jana Amrichova. They both ask about the direction of the philanthropic activities, and I believe that the direction where they are geared to is a big question. Okay, 2% assignation from income tax. Okay, we will be talking about corporate philanthropy later on, about individual. I know that Andrej has a very strong opinion on that, at least as of 2006, and I still believe that 2% assignation can be managed in various ways. My personal experience from December at our board of directors, the representative of trade unions said in front of the whole group of people, said that they, as a trade union, registered for 2% assignation from income tax, and that they expect the corporation to assign 2% to the trade union in order to be able to fund recreational stays of the employees. And I got really shivers and the chicken skin, and I went like, oh my God, this is, you can't be serious. This is a corporation's responsibility, and 2% designation should be used differently. The state gives us this tool in order that we as corporation realize and fill in the gaps and try to identify other gaps in the society as well. I will start from Boris maybe, because his experience may tell us more. What kind of constructs you are meeting? I can imagine that there is a great pressure from a corporation that this 2% designation should follow this corporate interest. 2% designation is an interest mechanism because there are some traces of philanthropy, but at the same time, there are no philanthropy at all, and this is this ambiguity about this mechanism, and we people love very unambiguous things. In my perception, 2% designation is certain mechanism that is sort of a hybrid tool that gives discretion to somebody who can, to corporation, who can say where he or she can assign the tax, and part of this income can be given to any create sort of an ownership. So people in the corporation have a feeling that they are deciding about their own money, and state has a different feeling that we are deciding about our common money, and on the top of that, the purposes for which the 2% designation are public benefit purposes. And this clash is, what is the public benefit purpose? Because there is a huge room for interpretation, and that's what we need in Slovakia. We need to talk about what are public benefit purposes and what are not by somebody determining this is so and this is not. We need a discussion, constructive discussion, talk about examples so that we all understand it better. So this is one perspective and one thing. And when it comes to the setting of some of those programs, when I talk about our cooperation with the Orange Foundation, the purpose is the purpose of this 2% designation is social assistance and education and the support of community, and this is how the programs are later on set and structured. And when we look at the use of the 2% designation in big corporations, I believe they reflect to a great extent the preferences which are basically the preferences of the majority of people. I'm not talking on behalf of other corporations and companies. I and the media, or I don't know them, but the big corporations we cooperate with have their strategic approach to the topics and the priority fields. And what I want to say is that whether it's more important health or education or culture is a question of value and attitude. So it's difficult to say this is more important than something else. In this sense, those corporations have a choice. Sometimes they listen to some advice. Other times they do it based on the decision of their top management. Sometimes they carry out a small survey. For younger participants here, this assignation mechanism was created in 1998 when this money from income, 2% assignation of income tax, was designed for individuals and legal entities, and by the amendment, firstly it was only individuals, and as of 2003 also corporations could assign. Then the number of foundations steeply increased from 23 to 81, so more than 50 foundations, and most of them were corporate foundations, were established after this amendment in 2003. And then another perspective, the creation of resources for NGOs. This mechanism was more designed based on the pressure that was developed that, okay, we should create certain mechanisms, certain tool for funding NGOs. And this is a reflection of what this state believes, how it wants to support NGOs. Maybe they were thinking more about how to support NGOs than about developing philanthropy. And those are two different questions. And I believe that the concept of and the strategy of this state towards active citizens is non-existent by now. And therefore, many decisions of various governments lack any philosophy. And this is why we are in a situation as we are. We try to maneuver within it. We try to do things about it. And from our experience, many NGOs, in spite of the fact there are great barriers towards individual donorship and many bureaucratic barriers to withdrawing money from public resources, the 2% designation is a very flexible tool that is extremely important for them. So this is a perspective of organizations that try to get money from individuals and corporations through this mechanism. Boris, I would like to get back to your article in SME. One of your, I meant Andrej, where you very clearly said that, okay, what you collect for Good Angel project goes totally to the recipient, to the beneficiary. Of course, there are organizational costs. You need to have staff, you need to organize staff. So from the discussion there, or one of the people debating there said, okay, but you need to live on something and from something. Please don't try to pretend that you can donate and gear everything to the beneficiaries, because you need to run your organization from something. Because I remember Martin Macharik from the Scout organization said when he was Scout that non-organized volunteer is worse than a natural disaster. So you must have some organization, but you need to invest the money from other sources. So are we closing the topic of 2% assignation, or where are we standing? No, you can cover both. This is a different topic.
Yes, we're going to talk about Good Angel, how it could be financed together with other organizations. When we tried to found Good Angel, we tried to ask people why so few people give money for charity. Why so few individuals? And so we went out and asked people. First of all, people said, we don't know how much money are going to be lost for people's salaries, for their travel cost. and food and accommodation, etc. If I give 100 crowns to someone, I don't know how much of that will actually land in hands of someone who is in need. So that was the first reason. So people are hesitating about helping because they don't know what was going to happen with their money. Secondly, they weren't sure what it means if I give money on Roma communities, what it means, what will physically happen with the money. So these were the major barriers for people that we needed to sort out and explain. So if it is so, if people feel mistrust, we have to build it the other way around. We have to build it around people's trust. So people need to know exactly where their 100 crowns go, so that they do not get some imprecise information. We needed people to get very precise information about who is going to get the money. They actually can visit the family that got the money, etc. So at the moment we have 4 employees in the company. We have overhead costs. So in order to start the foundation and in order that people start to trust us, I gave out 30 million Slovak crowns out of my own money. And this is the overhead costs that we are covering. So, in fact, it means that last year we generated about 3.4 million euros, which we distributed among needy people to the last cent. It means our overhead costs are never covered from the money that we generate from individual donors. And we cover our overhead costs and advertising and promotion, etc., only from our second fund generated from my own money. Of course, someone can say, well, you are no hero. If someone has so much money, it's no problem to give out a bit of that. Of course, yes, the situation is easier if I had my own fund, but now we are on the verge of situation where we are running out of the money that I invested, and we will have to find some other way to generate money for overhead costs. Now that we build the trust of people, I'm now visiting businessmen and I'm saying, in 5 years we've generated this amount of money and we need to cover our overhead costs, which is only about 6% of all the amount that we generate. So would you be so kind and would you contribute to cover our overhead costs in the future so that we can carry on generating money to help people? So please, Mr. Businessman, become our partner and try and support us so that we can carry on helping. I want a good angel to operate in 5, 10 or 20 year time. So I want my people to be sure that they will have jobs and that their salaries could be covered. So I really want the individual donors to be sure that anything they give will not cover overhead costs, it will only cover the needs of people. So I want the corporate sphere to cover the operation. And even if the corporate donors give us money, they know exactly to the very last cent where it goes. So we are going back to the trust that Marek started to talk about, but Boris indicated the state philosophy. Andrej and Lenka, you've been dealing with capacity building for about 20 years. So what we are dealing with now is a long-term activity. So what do you think about the state philosophy of the support of philanthropic area? Is this more about building mechanism for the corporate sphere, such as tax assignment, or should the state build on individual possibilities for giving? The speaker is not speaking into the mic, I'm afraid. So when it comes to the research, it shows that the first motivation for people to give is not tax exemption. It's not about some fantastic legislative framework in any dream country. So that's not the point. And if we take the situation of our country and the 2% assignment, I think we've learned a lot through 2% assignment, because we now know what NGOs are, what community is. We administer various foundations and funds, and there are long-term strategies of the corporate sphere and communication plans, and I can tell you several examples. Such as re-socialization of prisoners. Then there are other foundations preserving the castles, another one building children's playgrounds. Then telecom is dealing with problems of people with hearing difficulties. They're trying to employ these people, and they're also launching many courses, training courses, in order that these people are employable. So whether it is a talented designer or masseur, after going through the these courses, these people are really able to do what they'd like to do thanks to this corporate money. So I know that 2% is not a philanthropy, but other features of philanthropy are cases when, for instance, company gives an opportunity to their employees to contribute to the same fund from which they are giving to the third sector, or they can contribute directly to some projects. So once again, the effect is that it confirms for the company that they have some profile and they contribute to community, but it also builds a feeling of loyalty of the employees towards the leadership of the company. And the setting which we have at the moment with 1.5% of assignment plus 0.5% of their own profit is probably motivational. If it was 1-to-1 ratio, the amount would be unbearable in the current economic situation for the company. And it is probably up to us in the NGO sector, what should we propose to the next government for NGOs? Again, speaker's not using a mic. Okay, my question was, the company is now in the situation where they can only donate 1.5%, and if they give 0.5% of their own profit, then the state will give another 0.5%. So, if they only give 1.5%, that's it. But if they give the next 0.5% of their own profit, then the state will also contribute another half. So, I'd like to know how many companies really give out the next 0.5%. I can tell you, when we communicated in October, November, with the Ministry of Finance, we received an answer from the ministry that this 0.5% was given mainly by large corporations, though those which really earned much larger profits than average. So it would be about 5% of all the legal entities that gave this 0.5% of their own profit. We can look at the figures later, but we know at the moment that these are mainly large corporations which really pay huge taxes. So, Boris, what it means is that is it realistic, what Andrej is afraid of, that companies will cease paying from their own profits? We can see that there is a various motivation of different companies, and it is evident that corporations with large amounts to pay as a tax have a different viewpoint from those who can see it as some marginal addition. So this is what's reflected in society, I guess. But when it comes to the question of the further development and what to propose to the state and next government, we should say that yes, we've made some progress, and we cannot have huge dreams at the current economic situation, but we would probably have to make much more effort in order to show desirable models of social behavior. For instance, Slovakia has one of the most hostile policies towards immigrants. And that is one of the basic setting or attitude of us as Slovaks towards foreigners. If we want to take foreigners as aliens, if we do not want to be, or if we do not want to show hospitality to them, then we cannot expect major changes in this overall mood in society. So I believe we should focus much more on role models such as Mr. Kiska and others. And for that, we need many more of such role models to be shown in the society. And we also need to talk about this phenomenon much more in society. And we need this topic to be discussed in schools, in families, and only then we can expect some change in people's behavior. Because if we're not able to provide asylum for foreigners, this society is closed. It only focuses and dwells on their own families, and we do not take care of what's happening beyond our borders. The same happens with some collections of money during some catastrophic situations or cases when human rights are being violated. We can see that the Slovaks are very negligent of all these worldwide problems. Majka, you have mentioned situation of economic crisis, and the behavior of companies is changing. They are much more thrifty. You meet many people from business environment. So what are your feelings? How do people respond? Usually, when we have a meeting in E.ON, there is usually a quarrel about the amount of money which we should give out as a donation. we usually claim that 1% of our profit should not kill us. So, what's your experience? For instance, Mormon believe that 10% of their income should go to their religion. And currently, 10% is not anything that anyone would be willing to give. So, what do you encounter? What's your experience? Well, there are two aspects to this issue. First of all, if someone establishes a company, if I establish my own company, my first intention is to generate profit, and then I pay taxes, and of my taxes, something should be given out. So it's the state here to take the role of the social player. So that's a very simple scheme. If you talk to a business person from a small town, he faces many problems with payment defaulters, etc. So the most simple scheme is that I have my business, I pay my taxes, the state should care, I'm not going to give anything more. By an accident, I've just recently had a meeting with an owner of a successful company in Slovakia, and he said, I believe that I should give out all the profit of my company to charity. I've taken care of my children, I've earned enough, I'm really willing to give all my profit to charity. And here we're talking about hundreds of millions of euros here annually. This is one model that you can take. But none of the companies, whether they are mobile operators or banks or Accenture, none of these are operating in Slovakia in order to give out all the profit. So how much should we give? Well, that's a difficult question. The shareholders would have to be very empathetic and very socially oriented people. Usually people believe that they should take care to a certain extent about the community they live in and give back something that they've received from society. But when it comes to amount, well, that's very difficult to say. That's very individual, and there is a very different viewpoint of each company. So if you look at international I think it's an obligation of every person to help. It's a shame if someone is successful and doesn't help. Usually the companies are being very transparent in the way they help, and they are setting standards. The basic philosophy is that they pay taxes. And these large companies are usually helping to cultivate our environment. But the question of how much, well, that's very difficult to answer. Maybe Marek could answer that.
Ja tiež neviem koľko, ale skúsim to tak otočiť, to nie je možno aj tak otočiť koľko, ale ako efektívne. To znamená, že niekedy 10 000 eur môže mať lepší efekt a výsledný vplyv než 100 000 eur darovaných nemyselne.
Is anyone listening to translation in English?
Ty si sa na úvod pýtal, že kam sa ubrala akým smerom filantropia. Tak jeden z ďalších trendov je, čo aspoň mne sa zdá, ja nie som odborník, ani teoretik, ani expert, ale empiricky sa mi zdá, že sa ubrala...
Could you raise your hand if you're listening to English translation?
...nejakého reaktívneho darcovstva. To znamená, že ja som nejaký človek vo firme, ktorý dostane na rok rozpočet, asi 1 milión korún a má na starosti tú agendu darcovstva. Teraz mi prichádzajú každý deň na stoly listy od UNICEFu, od nadácie pre deti Slovenska a ja sa tak nejak intuitívne rozhodnem, no tak týmto dáme, týmto nedáme, ale vždy je to len v reaktívnej rovine, ale to, čo mne sa zdá, k čomu došlo, to možno vieš Lenka ešte lepšie, že už je to proaktívne, to znamená, že tie firmy si povedali, dobre, tak budeme dávať nejaké peniaze, to je jedno, či to bude fixná suma každý rok, alebo či sa to bude uberať ako percento nejaké zo zisku. Ale povedali si, že chceme podporovať nejaké témy, či už to je oblasť vzdelávania, oblasť umenia, oblasť športu, to je jedno.
Whether it is culture or whether it is different area, we know that we just want to reach our goals. Let's try and find out what NGOs are working in this area. Let's see what kind of projects could help us to achieve these goals in the most efficient way. Let's see whether we found the best ways of achieving our results. So it's not about the quality, it's not about the kind of projects, it's not about who you choose as an NGO to achieve your project. And what really worries me is an example of our company, Accenture. In the past 4 years, they are decreasing my budget for marketing, but they are increasing my budget for philanthropy. In other branches, there are marketing directors who would go bonkers if they were decreasing their budgets. In my company, I have a double role, so I'm guarding these two budgets, and sometimes I'm really angry. Why are we giving so much money out and we don't have a single penny to publish some brochure about what we're doing? But that's the strategy. More and more money is being given out and less money is being spent within the company. So that's the trend. And what is also happening is that we are not only giving money now, we are more and more giving our know-how pro bono. So we are providing consultancy without being paid for it. So this is also the way we are going.
One question to Lenka. Andrej has outlined it that some countries have it in their philosophical principle and approach. We have a statistics from 2005 where private contributions of private entities of individuals in the USA is about $700. In Great Britain it's much less, it's less than 100, and in the other countries of EU it's about 50 euros. So if we take one SMS or one text message per year, there were some activities that show that, for instance, within 2 days, a couple of millions euros were collected. So it's also about the way how the issue is approached. And there was one question through internet, because I can't come to your debate, how to achieve that philanthropy as such or NGOs would get more money from physical entities than legal entities, disregarding this percent of 2%, this mechanism of 2% assignation. I would like to follow on what Marek has said, because he has opened this topic of a new trend that is quite strong here, which is pro bono activities of various corporations that at the times of the crisis, and because of what we do as Pontis Foundation, we got money from the Accenture. We were so privileged to work with Accenture brains for 6 months, and when we calculated the hours that Accenture team spent with us and our team spent, it was 3,700 hours of working. We called us a sweet muffin, but actually it was an acronym for managerial and systemic program that we are trying to launch systemic work of top managerial practices. And when we turned this into money, it was more than 30,000. And when we added it with and combined it with software, hardware that we got, we ended up at an amount of about 70,000 euros. That, of course, we as a foundation would be only dreaming of, and we are very grateful for that. And this was inspiring for us because we have several projects for NGOs where last year in 6 cities, 75 corporations worked through the work of more than 4,000 volunteers. It was more than 100,000 euros that those people, volunteers, actually gave to the NGO sector. It was more than 100 activities, and maybe I'm getting to the answer to your question, that there is a person who comes to an NGO, finds out what it does, and first time in his life he meets an autistic person or a person who is somehow disadvantaged, and he understands that with his brain and skills he can help this person. For instance, he can help to tune certain marketing processes or set a database and structure a database, and which is of great help to this NGO in its communication with donors, with clients, etc. And we had multiple examples where, for instance, volunteers ran out of the colors if they were doing something, and they went and they bought colors for their own money. And Boris, one more positive example, when you were talking about our lack of tolerance towards foreigners. Again, when we were starting this project, Good Country, one of the projects we had was, because we had this goal to become a country showing solidarity, not only culture with country with a good culture and respect for our environment. We had this project for League for Refugees, and we saw that this will be quite a tough project to fundraise for. What was in contrast, it was actually the first project that got achieved its financial goal, and this that it fundraised money for education and training of one Iranian female. So I wanted to share with you that when it comes to regional discrepancies, where there is a lot for us to improve, and there is surely a space to support this culture. And we know that the culture has been changing for some time, and we can make some very practical things, such as a very simple way of giving, which takes form of good angel, but we can also take rid of some administrative barriers for donations. Public donations only take place in the streets, but in other countries we can see many other ways, such as coalition for individual donorship. The goal of this initiative is to get rid of the barriers in administrative approaches and procedures, so that there are more direct ways of accepting money from individual donors, so that we simplify the number of steps that people have to take in this particular situation. So this is also a way of making the people's life simple when they want to donate money, and also we should make attempts for NGOs to simplify their ways of operation, and also to make more apparent
more transparent their ways of operation, so that when you go to their webpage, you actually see who is behind, and so that you can see the annual report. And even though the times are changing, there are also many NGOs who are looking for some huge European money, but that's not the way forward. The future is in individual donors, and that's the way forward for all the NGOs. I think they should start to work on that right now. There is a know-how here. We've heard some examples. We know that it is possible. You just need to sit down. You need to have good consultants, and you need to have the devotion and faith that you can do it. So this is what I had to say. And from the view of the Center for Philanthropy, we can see the future in the individual donations. I think that's the burden will shift there. And if I may, I'd like to say that even in Britain or United States, heritage and testimonies is playing a huge role, because it's given culturally there, and also there is a tax situation which is quite different from ours. But I think this is also a way forward for us. We should try to confront people in a positive manner with these challenges.
Andrej, one sentence. Why we are not successful in getting individuals as donors? Or is the problem? Lately, I was in front of the shop, Bila, and there was this weird-looking female saying, "Okay, give your money to the child's oncology." And I stopped by and asked, "Okay, why? Where are you from?" "I'm from Chadza." "Well, but you in Chadza, you don't have oncology there, oncological department for children. What we lack here is a legislation. If somebody stops us and asks us, we need to have a total certainty that this person is entitled to do so. It is transparent, it is clean, and that the money will not be used elsewhere and otherwise. So if somebody wants to do something, it should be totally clear what is going to happen with the money, what was the process, so the whole arena is clean. If you have a third person that is stopping you by at the street, you will get really insecure, like, well, what is happening? And then you don't feel really like pulling out your money. And then you have problems with the real charity when they approach you, because it's a total mishmash and you don't have an idea who is actually approaching you, and you don't have a certainty. So there is a huge room for legislative improvement, that the public collections should be clear, transparent, that only really well-known subjects do that. I got a letter from a charity in Ukraine, certain, and there was a bank account, and I was thinking, wow, on earth, what is this all about? It's their fault, it's their guilt, and it took us a long time why we are doing it and how much we are going to save on the state budget. What's the social importance of this project? And then it was, what was sufficient was that a prisoner wrote to us. He said, I went through a program, and up till now, I lived in the way that immediately upon leaving the prison, I didn't know what to do. So I did something better, and I got back to the prison because that was the safe environment. And I scanned this letter and sent it to our people, and have a look, you have supported this. And their perception changed totally. So the comment and the suggestion for the NGOs, try to communicate, try to immediately emotionally give back this what they have given to you, how you use their money. A very good evening. I'm from Canada. I work in Slovakia, and I run a world project, and that's why I'm here. Last year, on June the 1st, I launched this project in Slovakia. It's a world project for female and children. It's a very serious thing. I've called so many corporations. I don't even want to name them because I'm ashamed, actually. And as a Slovak, born in Slovakia, I left when I was 3. And I got back to Slovakia in 2008, and I carry this and do this very serious project. And I'm really ashamed that I'm Slovak. For the whole life I have lived in Canada, and now when I go back to Canada, I will be kissing the ground there that I had lived there. I wanted to go back to my country, to Slovakia, and I'm so ashamed for what Slovakia is. There are hungry people. We have Africa in Slovakia, and nobody is doing anything with it. I can say very honestly that within 3 years I've been sleeping for 4 hours a day. And that means that I'm doing such a serious thing that people from other countries have joined with me because they see what I'm doing. And Slovak corporations told me that they are not interested to work on such a topic, on such a serious topic, what is killing people today. I used to teach in big corporations for 1 year. I went inside and started working with people so that I learned about the environment, and within 1 year I was teaching English, business English there, and those people were saying such a thing that I'm really so ashamed that I'm Slovak, but I know that there are people with big hearts in Slovakia because I know that they are here, because I have found them and I work with them who have a heart, who have a big heart. And now I don't know. Well, I only know one thing. We are here. People have hearts, and we are not here to get rich, because we are not going to take the money with us to the other world. I feel discriminated. I feel discrimination in Slovakia. It's not a trifle thing, because in Topolčany there is a huge discrimination against children. I came to Slovakia to adopt children to the environment, and I'm opening Human Relief Academy of Life, and I'm taking children who are orphans, and I'm trying to give them life because they don't have food here in Slovakia. I can take you to see it in your own eyes. So now when I go back to Canada in March, and I'm so thankful to God that there is Canada, because Canada helps me to carry out this world project in Slovakia, and the project that should show that we Slovaks have hearts. I live in Poprad. It's a bit bigger than Topolčany, I admit. I have lived there for a whole life, and my son used to study in the US for 4 years. Now my daughter studies there, and I'm grateful, and I'm glad to be born in Slovakia, and I'm proud of being born here, and I'm Slovak. And in spite of the fact that I'm really critical that only 25% of individuals wants to donate your money, in comparison to US, where it is 75% of individuals willing to donate their money. So on one hand I'm critical, but I don't think that this is a problem of us as people, because I want to judge him or him, First, I need to have a look where he spent his childhood, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Then when I looked at him, and when I give you an example, okay, that this person grew up in a community, unfortunately, there's this legacy of our past, and there will be, it will take time until we move from 25% to at least 50%. But you can't blame the individual, but you need to take into consideration the environment where we grow up. And only for 20 years we have had freedom. And finally, those young people have the opportunity to travel. But I wouldn't blame the people. We should blame the environment. And if I want to blame the environment, then we need to talk about the socialism and this really this overall social situation. So I wouldn't really say that it's all bad and rotten. I rather think that it's our role, our task, and the task of us and all the young people sitting here who are educated, who can travel, to show how it should be like. I was trying to run one project with the university students. We approached 6,000 university students to participate in one project, and I got only 35 volunteers. When I said that to my daughter, who studies in the US, she was totally puzzled. She was like, "Dad, you can't be serious." Yes, I was serious, but this is the overall situation, and it will take time. And maybe it will take 30 years until when somebody comes to university, says that and asks students, "Hey, let's go to help the Roma, let's help to use the deprived children." They will all say, "Oh, great, of course, this is our obligation." And yes, it will take time. There are issues of corruption. There are no good ideas or lack of good ideas. Therefore, we need to have successful donors, corporations, so that the young people have good examples, so they can meet them, so that they have idols, because they are missing their idols, their role models. I'd just like to add on what Andrej said. We are so grateful for, you were saying that you are happy that Canada exists. We are also happy that Canada exists because it gave us Tom Nicholson. I'll give you a specific example about the typology. We have 1,000 employees, one corporation, one corporate culture, and in spite of the fact, when we carry out the survey of satisfaction rate of our employees, and we ask them about everything and anything, and there's one question that has nothing to do with philanthropy. I will give you a parallel with this. We ask them, what do you miss more in the corporation when you do a good job, or what would you want for good work? One division, half of the employees says in majority, financial stimuli, money. And that's certain socio-demographic group. There's one division, and the second group answers. What we miss is thank you and positive feedback, and that's about philanthropy. The fact that people didn't give you money for a project, that's their free right, and maybe that I wouldn't really criticize them. But it's also about the motivation of people giving. Whether you approach people who are interested in numbers and money, or whether those who really want to have good feeling. I wouldn't say that all of the Slovaks are bad and Slovakia is all bad as such. Yes, of course, it's frustration for you as a person who tried it and you were not successful, but Lenka or Boris could give you examples about initiatives that were successful in the area you are working at. So yes, the experience is varies and different. 3 years are a short time. Go back to Canada and maybe have a break and then come back, and it will definitely get better. Sorry about the time. when I do something, I'm not going to say that, okay, I was not successful, so I will quit doing it. The fact that I was born in Slovakia and then I got back, I wanted to do something good, I will definitely do it. I'm not going back to Canada to do something what is needed here. We are really glad. So no, I wouldn't do it. I'm really glad. I just wanted to encourage you. And Canada is such a country that wants to help people. Canada is here because it wants to help people, not because it has nothing to do. Igor Polakovic, Center for Philanthropy. Hi, Boris. I really liked Mr. Kiska's comparison, the percentage about individual donors in individual countries. I just like to add on, when we compare Slovakia with the foreign and other countries, there's this question of regularity of giving. There is much fewer people who decide systematically to give money. Okay, as corporation, we are going to support this area, and I will make a permanent payment order. And I used to live in New Zealand, where an average person supports 2 organizations on a regular basis, and in the Netherlands, I believe it's 3 organizations, 1 person. So this is this culture we should be interested in changing, so supporting individuals to give and to give systematically and strategically. Yes, that's what Boris was saying. We need to eliminate the barriers, how many steps you need to do from the time you decide to do until you can give. Pensioners would rather call or pay a check, but our customers, like 66% of people does not trust the bank system because they pay for instance, utilities physically at the post offices. So you need, the pensioners. Many pensioners don't have a bank account. However, your generation does everything over the internet. My grandma would definitely go with her money and hand it over to Lenka, definitely not through banks. 20 years ago, there was not market economy here. That means the corporations were not forced to map the market and carry out marketing. 20 years ago or later, okay, sorry, what I want to say is that individual donors are not giving systematically is to a certain extent linked to the fact that there is also about the maturity of the NGOs, about their self-presentation. Igor Brosman, partner to Leo Barnett, Victor Leo Barnett, a big advertising company, was a partner. And I don't think it would be so successful. And your brother, Andrej, is a great marketer. And I think that's part of the success. And within 20 years, we have a free economy here. Many commercial corporations can't present themselves duly. And they have huge budgets and many people working there, and how could you expect that from NGOs to be good at self-presentation? So this is about the awareness among public, and it's yet another topic, and what's the role of the media? That's an everlasting topic, whether they should cover it in the media. So it would be then as if the corporations are doing the philanthropy in order to get into the media, but if they don't cover it, then there is no public pressure or this enthusiasm to give. Last question. Beata Hodžaková, a small comment for lady from Canada. As every single person has certain values that are developing, the Maslow's pyramid is valid also for society, that immediately, if you have a social status and acknowledgement that you want to run business and you want to have enough money for your own life. I believe that we as a society will mature, we will shift and move in our value systems, and I hope that we will get better also in the sphere of giving. And please, panelists, give your last words. For the minority that is here, that means for the representatives of corporations, what I would like to say, and what was striking to me, is that when you want to do philanthropy, there is one fresh study from McKinsey Corporation. They're strategic consultants. They said that sometimes when a corporation does a good public benefit thing, they can get negative results. They did a study among people, and they wanted them to compare that you have a corporation with high quality products, and then you have a corporation with high quality product, and how many of those products you would buy if you knew about that company that they do philanthropy. But, so on one hand, the philanthropy increased the number of purchased products. On the other side of the spectrum, it was a negative. There was a corporation with bad products running philanthropic activities that actually they would get even less support, and people would get less, people would buy less products. First and foremost, you need to focus on your core business and only then run philanthropy. Thank you for your attention, for your being here, and there will be a copy of this debate on the Facebook. So Andrej, Boris, Lenka, Marek, thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. And Andrej and Ellen, thank you for organizing this event. Thank you and have a good evening.